She was my best friend's mom, and she said, "No one can ever know about this." The first time she said it. It wasn't a warning so much as a reflex. It was late, the hallway of the clinic humming with the leftover heat of a day that had pushed our patience to its edges. And Elise had that look she gets when she is trying to put the world back on its shelves. Her voice found the crack between a laugh and a plea and slipped through. "No one can ever know about this." The words hung there like steam from a kettle that refuses to stop. "Even after you turn the flame down." I didn't answer right away because answering too quickly makes a sentence harden into a rule. I have learned this much: there are truths you can only honor if you let them take a breath in the room first. I should tell you that Elise is my best friend's mother. Cole and I grew up in a town that could fit on a map the size of a napkin. A place with a diner that smelled like it had been buttered since 1978 and a high school gym whose floor knew the squeak of our sneakers as well as it knew the sound of the pep band playing a little too loud to hide the fact that it was out of tune. When Cole left for Phoenix with a suitcase he pretended wasn't heavy. He made me promise to check on his mother. "Just keep an eye," he said, as if a person could be guarded like a porch light. I said I would because that is the easiest promise to make and one of the hardest to keep without changing anything else. Elise works the schedule at St. Elora Clinic, which is a fancy way of saying she moves time around so that people don't break under it. She knows whose kindness makes them run late and whose ego does. She keeps a paper planner because the computer never learned how to remember the sound of a voice that is about to cry. She carries her pen like a compass. She wears a scarf in winter that her mother knit back when there were more people in the house and fewer drafts. After her divorce, the house sounded like a church after the congregation leaves, clean, quiet, and unsure what to do with its own echo. I work evenings as the clinic's biomedical tech. I don't have a 4-year degree. I do have hands that know where machines hide their shame. I can tell by the pitch of a fan whether a monitor wants to live. I can tell by the color of the little LED on the oxygen manifold whether the night will be long. It is not glamorous, but it matters, which is one of those sentences you learn to love more with each year you get older. I am 24, though sometimes in the mirror I see a boy in a suit that fits. Surprised that the sleeves have learned his arms. We didn't begin as anything anyone would call romantic. We began as two people who like it when things work. Functioning is its own intimacy. It asks you to keep secrets no one will ever whisper about. She would hand me a stack of batteries and a look that meant, "Do your quiet magic." I would hand her a recalibrated cuff and a look that meant, "Your calendar saved 3 hours today," and nobody clapped. If the world were a fair judge of character, people who keep a place running would have parades. But the world is a bored jury. It prefers stories with sirens and scandals. It will take the rumor over the repair every time. The first crisis that welded us happened on a Thursday. Power hiccuped, the way a building coughs to remind you it's alive. And then the hallway went that particular red exit that makes even a small clinic feel like a submarine. Monitors beeped questions. The vaccine fridge blinked an eye at me that said, "Choose." I had the transfer switch open before the generator remembered it had sworn an oath. Elise stood in the doorway with her hands steady on the frame, the way you steady yourself when the floor you trust decides to become a boat. She didn't ask if I could fix it. She asked which rooms needed to be visited first when the lights came back. There are 1,000 kinds of competence. Hers has always been the one that makes other people's competence possible. When the generator finally took the weight and the building exhaled into light the color of relief, she smiled in that small private way of hers that does not show teeth, but shows gratitude like a coin you don't want to flash in public. "You build quiet around panic," she said, as if it were a skill you could put on a resume. I said something about the vaccine fridge holding steady, about the oxygen alarms being more drama than danger, about the copy machine being a liar as usual. She laughed. The sound bounced off the linoleum and came back to us a little braver. A week later, the medication fridge failed not with a bang but with a sulk. I heard it in the way the compressor stuttered and decided honesty was no longer its job. We saved what we could with cold packs and body heat. And when the courier drove off with a cooler full of what someone else would need more than we did, Elise sat on the floor next to the mop closet and let her body shake. I zipped her sweater because her hands had forgotten how. She let me. There was nothing romantic in the gesture unless you count the kind of romance that believes dignity is a two-person job. Later, washing my hands, I caught my face in the mirror looking more like a man than usual. Sometimes the room puts a year on you and you find you needed it. This is where I admit that my mother thinks I collect women's worries like other men collect knives. She says I like to fix the kind of problem that isn't mine to fix. She is not wrong. Another part of me knows the difference between rescuing and witnessing, between taking over and simply shouldering. If I am going to be useful in this world, it will be because I learned when to hold a wrench and when to hold still. You want to know about the sentence? No one can ever know about this. It came later, after a block party where the men with boats talked louder than their stories. After a blurry photo on the staff message board labeled as a power couple lol, by someone whose humor always wore other people's lives as a mask. After Elise's ex-husband Marcus appeared at the front desk at 6:55 p.m. sharp to ask if the clinic had a policy on co-worker relationships. Just curious, he told the receptionist, who could have killed a rumor with one look if rumors were animals that died from shame. He left his card as if to tip the staff for their discretion. That night, after we had counted syringes and salvaged schedules and written emails that made money feel like generosity instead of control, Elise and I ended up in the break room with 2 cups of tea and a silence that had to be handled like glass. She said that line because fear got there first. If you have ever been a mother in a small town, or a woman in any arena where everyone pretends to be polite but tracks your steps like foxes on fresh snow, you will understand it without needing any additional evidence. No one can ever know about this. The sentence is not always about shame. Sometimes it is about protection. Sometimes it is work. I did not answer with a lecture about living in daylight. I did not make a noble speech about truth and the freedom of being seen. I said, "Okay," softly, in a tone that meant, "We will decide what this even is before we let anyone else name it." And then, because she deserved better than a man who would hide behind her secrecy and call it romance, I added, "As long as it does not make us liars to Leo." And she nodded like a person who had expected me to say something worse and was relieved to be disappointed. Leo is her son, 14, tall in the way boys get tall too fast. Like their bones are ambitious and their muscles are taking notes. He plays pickup basketball with a seriousness that makes you think the rim is a judge. He is the reason Elise keeps her phone plugged in and the reason she sometimes forgets to take her scarf off indoors. The first time he and I met as something other than his older friend's buddy from down the block. He was building a bridge for a physics project with LED strips that lit when a coin completed the circuit. We soldered in the kitchen while Elise chopped peppers in a rhythm the house already knew. Leo burned his finger once. I burned mine twice. And at the end he stood back and looked at the lights like a person who had caught a rumor and turned it into a fact. "Okay," he said, the way his mother says okay when a day has not beaten her. "Okay, the thing about a small town is that gossip is the weather. It rolls in whether you planned your day around it or not." After Marcus's visit, the cashier at the pharmacy asked me if the clinic was hiring more night staff. And the way she edged the question left enough room for me to pour my dignity out on the counter if I wanted. I did not. At the diner, men who liked to be on the winning side of other people's lives made jokes about whether I did house calls. "Day plumber, night plumber," the dishwasher said, rolling his eyes so far you could hear it. I tipped double and left without my receipt because receipts are for people who need more proof than I have time to provide. Priya in HR called us into a small room with a table that had seen more apologies than lunches. She read rules. We said we would tell her if and when anything changed. She asked if we wanted to speak to legal about restraining an ex from making inquiries about our internal policies. Elise said she wanted to keep the peace and keep the peaceable. Priya made a note in a neat hand and looked at me over her glasses the way a person looks at a crossing guard when the road is full of trucks. "Do your job, kid, but do not get flattened." I promised in my head to learn how to walk slower when the street looked busy. Cole called on a Sunday. Desert on the other end of the line. He asked how his mother was doing with that particular anxiety that sons of divorced parents get. The one that sounds like pride and resourcefulness but feels like failure if you listen close. I told him she was good, which is both a lie and the truth most of the time. He said he missed the porch light. I told him it was on. He told me to keep an eye. I said I would and hated myself for saying it like a man who planned to deliver more than he could carry. He said he might come home for a long weekend if flights stayed cheap. Bring your jacket, I told him. It's colder than it looks. You should know that there were days I wanted to kiss her and days I wanted to never be in a situation where the story could be written without my consent. Wanting is not the same as doing, but it gets close enough to need guardrails. We made some. We did not touch at work except the kind of touch that belongs to everyday heroics. Her hand on my forearm when a cart almost clipped me. My hand on her elbow when a cable wanted to introduce her to the floor. We did not go out to dinner in our town, but we did eat soup at her table and laughed enough about whether soup qualifies as a meal that Leo told us we were exhausting and then smiled into his phone where his friends could not see. Marcus escalated. He filed a motion in family court claiming Elise's inappropriate relationship with a younger colleague created an unstable environment for Leo. He brought the blurry hallway clip like a child brings sea glass, precious because he found it. Not because it shines. He wore a tie the color of expensive medicine. Elise read the document and carefully set it on the table like a plate she did not want to break. Then sat with her hands in her lap so they would not fly up and knock things over. He turned our heir into evidence. She said, I have never wanted to break anything as much as I wanted to break the idea that love and care could be litigated by people who do not know the names of the night sounds in your house. Before the hearing, Leo asked to meet me at the coffee place that pretends it is a city. He drank something with caramel in it but made a face like sugar was a personal insult. My dad says you and my mom are. He let the sentence trail because men do not like finishing sentences that might require crying. Are you? We take care of each other. I said, we try to do that in ways you would not have to hide from anyone. We are not doing anything that would make you ashamed. And we won't. He nodded. He pulled his hat down like a curtain. She smiles more when you're around. He said, trying to sound annoyed and failing. She also yells at the insurance portal more. I like that. He looked at the lid of his cup as if it might provide more material. If you hurt her, I will be very mean to you on the internet. We both laughed. That was our first pact. The hearing was as dramatic as assembling a bookshelf with bad instructions and one missing screw. Priya testified like a woman who pays attention for a living. The judge asked boring questions with the kind of gentle disdain that tells you she has already seen a worse version of your life and survived it. Marcus's lawyer tried to make the hallway clip into a poem. It was not. Elise told the truth without tremble and without apology. When we stepped out into the parking lot afterward, Elise leaned her forehead against the cool window of my car and said, I hate that you had to sit there while strangers held your face up to the light. I said I could be embarrassed without being ruined. It was only half bravado. The other half was experience. Shame and I have a truce from a long time ago. Summer made the clinic's rooftop into a skillet. The AC unit threw 2 tantrums and I climbed up with our maintenance guy and a borrowed capacitor and a prayer I would not say in front of children. The city melted at the edges like an ice cream you leave in the sun because you forgot delight needs shade. When we got the fan to spin and the unit to purr. Elise handed me a bottle of water so cold it stung. You are very good at convincing machines to keep living, she said, and I said I wished we could bill them for gratitude. That night, we stayed after closing to finish a grant application that could buy us a medication fridge that did not feel about its job the way certain men feel about carrying groceries, willing only when asked loudly and often. The printers made that sound printers make when they are working too hard for paper. Elise stood by the window and looked out at a street that had decided to be kind for once. Do you ever feel like you're the only person awake who cares about the rules? She asked. All the time, I said, and then, except when I remember there's at least one other. We stepped toward each other. The kiss was not a movie stunt. It was a careful thing. A clause we signed in a language we had learned slowly. When we pulled back, we laughed in the same astonished key and stood with our foreheads touching like people thinking of the same name at the same time. We will not be foolish, she said. We will be kind to the people who have to adjust to us. We told Priya the next day. She made a face that said, I have a calendar, I can count, and gave us the speech about boundaries we had already written on the inside of our ribs. Cole came home in August. He hugged his mother like a man shakes a tree and hopes fruit will fall. It did. He sat on our porch and asked me to go for a drive. We ended up behind the high school where we taught each other to parallel park with traffic cones and profanity. He drummed the steering wheel the way he does when he is rehearsing what courage sounds like. People have been talking, he said, which is a sentence that belongs to every century. Are you in love with her? There are questions you should answer by aiming for the soft tissue of honesty and hoping it holds. I love her, I said. I don't know if I'm in love with her yet. I know I want to be the person she can trust with her tired and her brave. I know I want you to be able to look at me and not feel like you lost something just to keep me. He watched my face the way he used to watch the sky for rain on days we planned a game. If it turns into love, he said, we talk again. We shook on it. It was both childish and holy. After the worst of the gossip burned itself out on the nearest available pile of dry sticks, the town settled into a rhythm where our story became background music instead of a solo. The receptionist with the lethal eyebrow told Elise her cousin married a younger man and had the best marriage in the county. The lab tech with forearms like columns clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good for you too," in a tone that did not demand a confession. A woman in the waiting room held her baby and said to no one in particular that the clinic lights made her feel less alone. When the grid failed one night and the generator made us a lighthouse on a block that went dark, people wandered in and stood in the lobby under the appeal of electricity. Elise poured water. I checked alarms. Priya told a story about her mother's garden in a way that made strangers feel like family. When the power came back and people drifted out, someone said thank you in a voice that was mostly a prayer. Some nights that is enough. We did not become reckless. We did not move in together. We learned to leave evidence of each other's lives in ways that did not upstage Leo's need to believe his home belonged to him. 2. A charger in the clinic. A book at my apartment. A jacket on the back of a chair that remembered the weight without needing to brag about it. We fought once because I was late and my phone died and Elise had rearranged the afternoon like a conductor saving a performance from a horn section with the flu. I can carry a day, she said in the quiet voice she uses when she is holding back the argument that would win too hard. I cannot carry not knowing whether I have to. We made a plan. A period sent by text means benign chaos. More words coming. It was a silly solution that saved us from being tragic more than once. My mother met Elise by accident at the diner on a morning when the pipe under the sink decided to confess its sins all at once. I slid out from under the cabinet with hands that smelled like old water. Elise and Leo were in a booth by the window, plates like small altars before them. My mother took them in with a look that stacked understanding into a neat tower. "You're the scheduler," she said. Elise said she preferred the person who moves time around until it behaves. My mother nodded at Leo and asked if he wanted bacon. He said yes like a person says yes to forgiveness. After they left, my mother wiped the counter slow and said, "Love is heavy, carry it like a dresser, one on each side. Counting the steps, resting on the landing if you must. Don't let either of you go backward down the stairs because the other forgot to say when the turn is coming." This is the kind of wisdom that sounds like it came from a poster until you have to move an actual dresser. I got an offer from a larger hospital across town in May. Better pay, more machines, a ladder with visible rungs. I held the letter in the break room like a person holds a dessert they did not order. Elise walked in, saw the logo, and put her face in order the way people do when they are practicing not to be selfish. "You'll be good there," she said, and I heard the capital Y. "I'm not sure yet," I said. We sat on the back steps and watched Leo try to teach the neighbor's dog about skateboards. which is a lesson in humility for any species. Pick the place where you will be proud of the person you become to keep the job. She said, and I turned the sentence like a wrench to see if it fit. I stayed. A week later, the big hospital froze hiring and rescinded letters that looked like mine. I might have been safe. I might not have. Life does not keep receipts for the times you chose decency and got lucky. You have to remember them yourself. We celebrated Leo's 15th at the river, which is generous branding for a creek with a dream. Marcus brought store-bought cookies and a new girlfriend whose ponytail judged the world in small sways. He nodded at me like men nod when they want to pretend they're working together. You really in this for the long haul? He asked. Yes, I said. It's easier until it isn't. He offered, as if wisdom were a coupon. Then one day you'll be the older one. I'm not in it for easy. I said, we are not trading compliments for youth. He looked at me like a man checking a level. He nodded. Don't make the boy carry your love like a couch. He said, and I promised we would count the steps. We kissed again the night the clinic reached its donation goal for a new ultrasound. Staff crowded into the break room with paper cups of sparkling water. Alondra, the new nurse with humor like a seatbelt, saw us and grinned. Then apologetically Wolf whistled. We did not scold her. Joy likes a witness. We also did not pose. We are not a couple that performs well for cameras. We are good at arranging faces for each other instead of for the imagined chorus of viewers who could be watching any room at any time. I have not forgotten the sentence. No one can ever know about this. It belonged to a season in which secrecy felt like the only way to keep the walls from moving. It was born of a fear I cannot condescend to because I have felt it. 2. But sentences evolve when people do. A year from the first time she said it. We stood in the clinic lobby after a storm had knocked half the city loose from its certainty and watched neighbors stand under our light like travelers under a sign that promises shelter. When I was a girl, Elise said, I thought adulthood was a set of doors that opened if you said the password. Now I think it's this: keeping a light on when the grid forgets you exist. And not minding when strangers come to stand in it with you. I said, guys my age want that. And she laughed in a way that made me believe she believed me. We put our names on forms where forms asked. We told the truth when the truth belonged in the room. We kept the rest for the people who had earned it. Cole asked me in a parking lot if I was happy. I told him I was learning to be. Leo sent me a video of a skateboard trick he finally landed with the caption landed it and no punctuation. Which is the only way to write a sentence like that. My mother brought cupcakes to the clinic with too much frosting and wrote on the whiteboard, "Thank you for keeping the lights on." Priya erased the heart someone drew and replaced it with compliance, and everyone laughed because sometimes being loved by the rules feels like a miracle. If you are asking yourself what exactly this was in Elise's sentence, you have missed the point and also landed on it. This was the fragile bridge between the thing we could ruin by naming too soon and the thing we could save by naming when it was strong enough to stand. It was the work we did quietly in a building that liked to pretend it was just a building. It was soup and LED bridges and rooftop repairs and courtrooms and phone calls and the way a boy leans his head on his mother's shoulder for the length of a breath and then returns to orbit. It was our decision to be two people who earned tenderness and then let it exist without apology. On the anniversary of the night she said it, Elise found me in the corridor with 2 cups of tea and a look that held more mischief than the year before. "No one can ever know about this," she said, not a whisper now but a playful echo of a door we had already walked through. "Everyone already knows," I said, and handed her a cup. We stood there for the length of a sip and watched the clinic decide to be a clinic again. Outside, the town did what towns do, rearranged its attention. Inside, the latch on the back window did not rattle in the wind. I had shimmed it months ago. It still held. I wish I could tell you there was a grand finale. There wasn't. There were pancakes where the first one always burned and we called it ceremonial. There were mornings when the hallway lights flickered just enough to make the day tug on your sleeve. There were nights when we locked the door and turned the sign to closed and Elise said, "I'm proud of how we carried the dresser today," and I said, "I'm proud of how we counted the steps," and Leo rolled his eyes and hid his smile behind whatever teenagers use as armor that year. There was the business of keeping people breathing and machines honest. There was, occasionally, a kiss that tasted like a promise we kept without making a speech. I could say we lived happily ever after, but it would be more precise to say we lived transparently ever after in the ways that mattered and privately in the ways that protected the few rooms that still deserved a door. If you want scandal, this is the wrong house. If you want to know the secret, it is this: respect first, then the rest. Love knows no age is a line that sounds good on paper. The truer line is the one I keep writing under it with my day. Love keeps the light on, and brings another chair to the table, and waits for the soup to be ready, and does not make a child carry the furniture. Love knows when to say yes in public and when to leave a little space where only the people who have earned it get to stand. We turned the sign to open the next morning and let the town in. The generator did not have to prove anything. The exit signs glowed out of habit, not warning. Someone taped a note to the whiteboard that said, "Remember to breathe." Someone else drew a heart and then, thinking better of it, drew a check mark through it like a joke only we would find funny. Elise touched my sleeve a second longer than strictly necessary when she handed me the stack of batteries. Priya raised an eyebrow that translated to behave. Leo texted me a photo of the river pretending to be a lake and wrote, "Okay, the day did what days do. We did what we have learned to do. No one had to know everything. Enough people knew enough. That was the point. And the mercy. And the promise we kept."